MysteryWire.com, home of the unusual and unknown. From Area 51 to the paranormal, it's your source to the most vetted UFO stories and special investigations in the world. Take a journey into the universe of MysteryWire.com.
Things die down at the ranch. You're in caretaker status. You have security on the property, and they continue to collect stories and incidents and things like that. But then a new opportunity comes along. Because of the notoriety of the property gets out there, and a scientist from the DIA contacts you.
Yeah.
And it starts a new chapter.
Yeah. Which I didn't believe him.
No.
And he assumed I wouldn't believe him. You know. So he said, okay, here's my credentials, here's who I am, call it and find out. Which of course I did, and sure enough, he was real. You know, he was real, and he's a great guy. He is just genuinely, I'm glad that our country is able to hire people like him.
He says, hey, I'm interested in the property, I'd like to go see it. And then he comes out to meet you, and you go together?
Yeah, yeah, and he had done his homework because he recognized from the air in my plane, when we were starting to get close to the ranch. So he had seen photos, aerial photos of some kind, about the property, and he said, oh, we're getting close, you know, so.
So you go there, he meets the property managers, the husband and wife.
Yeah.
Walks around the property with you, you tell him where things had happened, and.
Not much of a tour. We were probably on property, George, all together, maybe 45 minutes, an hour at the very most. An hour at the very most, so I would say more like 45 minutes. And he had a customized exhibition for him by the phenomena. We go inside the manager's house, which was Terry Sherman's house, and now it was Gene and Richard's house, and our new managers, because this was much later after Terry and his wife left. And so we go in there, and we sit at their little dining room, off the living room, in the small house, and there's a kitchen over here too. And so we're sitting north, south, east, west around the table. And so the visit's over, and we get back on the plane, and he says to me, he says, when we were sitting there in the dining room, did you see anything? And I said, well, no, because, you know, somebody's sitting here and here, and somebody's sitting here and here. So you have this kind of views going on. You have views this way and views this way, right? Mostly is what you're looking. You know, you're not looking behind you. Somebody across from you is seeing what's going on behind you, right? So his perspective was being able to see what was going on behind the person, like you and I are across from each other right now, and I can see behind you what's going on. And that was his perspective. No, I hadn't seen anything, I told him. It's okay. Finally, after a while, he says, well, I saw something. Oh. Well, gradually, over days, he's loosening up and telling me about what it is that he saw. Well, he saw something that was elevated off the floor, wasn't supported by anything, and it was rotating. So, and it was tubular. And I got this over a period of time, because he wouldn't fess up and talk about it like it was a state friggin' secret, you know? Well, hell, you know, just an observation on the ranch, big deal. Just, you know, we all have these things. Tell us what's going on, you know? But he kept it very close to his vest for quite a long time, for days and days, weeks. And so finally, it was an object that wasn't supported by anything.
It was floating in the air.
It was in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Which was right behind his line of sight, and it was tubular, and there was a rock group that had an album called Tubular Bells.
Yeah, Mike Oldfield, yeah.
Okay, and yeah, and so that was on the cover apparently, and he said, that's the closest thing I can come to as to what the structure of this looked like. So it was George, he was there for 45 minutes. This thing was customized for him.
It decided it wanted him to see something while he was there.
Exactly. I mean, we couldn't have done anything to be more impactful if we tried. Yeah. If we had tried to concoct something up, there's nothing that could have been more impactful for him to be able to see this at close range. This was probably like, maybe 11 feet from him, 10, 12 feet away at the most, so close.
So did he pitch you the idea of a study, of a program then, or did he go back to Washington, talk to Harry Reid, and then proceed from there? What's the process there?
Well, it evolved using the three of us, Harry and this other fellow, I probably shouldn't mention his name, and
not yet,
and myself. And Harry was very brave for being a politician. He had a lot of balls to be able to take this on and say, okay, I'm fascinated enough to where I'm going to get involved here and see what we can do to turn this into a program. And so it was established as a program, and it required the help of a couple other senators, Senator Inouye and Senator Stevens. And I believe Stevens had an experience, coincidentally. On these topics, you and I both know it's hard to separate coincidences, serendipities, everything. Yet after a while, how much serendipity is there? The bucket seems to overflow with serendipity when you finally have to say, damn it, this isn't, something else is causal in this event or these events, But anyway.
Well, Reid had been an attorney in your father's airplane accident, I think.
Yeah, he actually was. He was representing I think he had been, how was that? I forget now exactly who he was representing, but anyway, yeah, he had been involved, and Senator Stevens had a sighting, and so they put a competition together. And I didn't, we weren't privy to all of what the Defense Intelligence Agency was motivated by, and how this was, what were their interests. I mean, there are things that probably exceeded what we were entitled to know, even though we had clearances and all that. TSSCI clearances, so we were card-carrying members of the agency, and TS is Top Secret Special Compartmental Information, TSSCI. So everybody has all different agendas, right? And so they had a plan, a program, and we wound up winning the program and winning the contract for that. I think Harry's interest began in the area when he attended some of our meetings.
NIDS.
At NIDS.
Yeah.
He was there.
Yep.
And so I think that helped galvanize his interest. And, I think that made him more sympathetic to it maybe, and at least intrigued him that, yeah, there's a lot to this topic, and it's a pretty damn serious topic.
You've heard the scuttlebutt that floats around. Well, this is a sweetheart deal. Harry Reid and Bob Bigelow are friends. This is a senator doing a favor for a constituent who's also contributed to campaigns and stuff like that. Harry Reid's a Democrat. You're not really a Democrat at all. You will support candidates here or there. The fact that he was open to UFOs enough to come to NIDS, keep it on the lowdown, but he was interested. That probably helped your interest in supporting him.
Well, as a political supporter, I have supported Democrats and Republicans. because I like to support the person. It's not the party so much, it's the person. Where's the person's heart, and where are they, you know? And so, yeah, I had supported Harry. I supported a lot of other Democrats too, and Republicans, and so, but we were well positioned because of the physicists that we knew to win that award, and it was an objective contest, and it was put out, and so I don't know who all the competition was, but we weren't alone, and we won the competition, won the award.
But you were tailor-made for this.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was tailor-made for you, but I mean, you already had expertise. You had been down the road with NIDS.
Well, we had
you owned the ranch.
We had the only living laboratory.
Yeah.
You know, in the operation in the United States, like it was, you know, the Skinwalker Ranch, and we had a cadre of scientists and staff already. We were more equipped. There are some other people and companies that you and I know about, but this that maybe could have gone into this, but not in this kind of way. They have
It's too much work.
Well, and they have other asset angles to go after, right? So in this kind of a case, we had a living laboratory, and we were able to process government people into this living laboratory and let them experience, for better or for worse, what was going on. And that's exactly what happened, you know? So I think, what did the government get out of it? I think besides all the reports that we generated, they got a tremendous amount of verification on all kinds of events and kinds of things that happened that they would not have gotten any other way.
Is it accurate to say that you also landed the contract because you're willing to put your money where your mouth was, that you spent money to prepare your facility here to handle the program, to hire people?
Right.
And you actually spent more than you got. I mean, this is not a moneymaker for you.
Yeah. I bought buildings and so forth, and did different kinds of things, and we thought it was going to continue a little bit longer than it did, and we got up to about close to 50 staff, and and then I continued beyond the cessation of the program. I continued, you know.
You kept it going for a year,
I kept it
right?
going.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kept it going. And part of that was, well, you don't know if there's going to be a recurring interest, or is, you know, what are you going to do in something that's so unique? I wasn't interested in making it broadcasted publicly. It wasn't for public consumption, because the work was pretty esoteric. It was you didn't know what you're dealing with exactly, and you were taking things home, and we knew that, but nobody got hurt, and we weren't doing anything intentionally for anybody to take anything home whatsoever. And as I said, when I found out about the government people having some very explicit kinds of things happen, that's when I said, okay, this, I don't want to continue.
The DIA cutting it off, I don't know if you want to talk about the reasons for that. I mean, there were some political machinations, a little bit of a turf war, but there was also fear, gosh, if it gets out that we're studying this really weird stuff, we're going to be embarrassed. And as well as some religious folks who thought you were opening up the doors to hell or something like that.
Well, on the last year of funding, somebody got into the money that was supposed to come to us, and they took it. And that was the cause of why it wasn't funded the third year, is that the money went south to another place, another department. But within the agency was a religious peculiarity, a predisposition based on religion that scared a number of people in the agency, perhaps even outside the agency, that wound up dominating the thinking. And so this was based on certain religious convictions.
If it had been allowed
at first we didn't believe it,
right.
But then finally our program manager said, yeah, this is the case, believe it, right here in River City, you know, this is going on. And as something as human as that is undermining the discovery process, you know. So, okay, we understand. We're working with people, and people come in all different flavors, all different mental predispositions, and it is what it is. And it's not everybody's cup of tea. So I respect if somebody can't cope with a particular position on a topic, whether it's survival or ET or whatever it might be, because of convictions they already have or acquired in some way, so be it. You know, it's still a free country so far.
You found another home for it, right? And you thought it was going to go forward, and then the door gets slammed. I think the door kind of got slammed because you were knocking on doors that people didn't want to open, looking for the goodies. Is that right?
We were, yeah. There's a SAP is another acronym. So TSSCI is for clearances, and then it can be TSSCI SAP, and it can be an unacknowledged SAP or an acknowledged SAP. Most presidents of the United States are not privy generally to all SAP programs by any means. Definitely not to an unacknowledged SAP. And it's for their own protection. It's for denial. I'm not talking about the river in Egypt.
Yeah.
You know, it's for denial. And so, and then there's an acknowledged SAPs also are very sub rosa, and most presidents are not knowledgeable about acknowledged SAPs, although it can be bifurcated. It could be, maybe it's 50-50, maybe they are into that and maybe not. It depends upon the staff's predisposition as to whether or not they want to tell. And maybe they don't like that president. Maybe they figure the president is not reliable and can't be trusted with the information. And so they're not going to tell him. He won't know. He won't know. And you'd think, well, all presidents do? No. No, not by any means do all presidents know. What's absolutely not. The community is extremely small that actually really know where things are and what's going on is really, 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 really small. Okay? And so, so in our case, the predisposition against us of a religious conviction manifested itself in such a significant way that the rug was pulled out from under us at inopportune time.
You can imagine how far you would have gone if they'd been allowed to continue with 50 or more employees plugging away, going around the world, interacting with, acquiring other government files, going out to hotspots, investigating boots on the ground incidents, UFO cases, other phenomena, versus what exists now, the UAP task force, 2 or 3 people, no budget. I mean, you could have really made a dent in this topic and the big questions.
Well, and you're leaving out, you know, the kind of the holy grail of the topic, you know, machinery.
Yeah. Is there machinery? Is there, that's what the New York Times story, which we'll talk about in a second. New York Times reported that you modified your facility here in order to house some material from somewhere else. Did you ever have it?
We never had any.
Did you ever see it?
You know, do you see things that are photos, or do you see things in person, and so forth? So you don't want to talk about stuff in case it happens.
Yeah.
In the future.
Yeah.
And because who knows what might happen in terms of a coalescing of intersections that could happen. And so
you don't want to spill any beans that causes you, it puts you in a bad light somewhere down the road.
Well, I think that machinery really does exist. It does exist, you know, and so, but the problem has been the inability to back engineer. And I kind of think that some things require a weightless environment. So part of that is we don't have it here terrestrially. So what you need is a manufacturing facility where there's a weightless environment.
It's part of the reason you develop Bigelow Aerospace.
For certain amalgams and certain kinds of things, but it's also like, you know, it doesn't do you much good to own a sliver of a case that holds a cell phone to understand, was it even a case? Was it holding something, and what was that something it was holding? And much less, how does a cell phone work? And oh, by the way, it doesn't work at all if you don't have all the communication capabilities that the cell phone needs to communicate with, and all that kind of thing. So it's like, it could just domino out into 1,000 different things. So having an answer on a small sliver of something isn't necessarily much, right? So we are embarrassingly, as a species, as a science, as a spacefaring attempting species, behind. We're a galactic embarrassment almost. You know, I mean, we're so far friggin' behind. We really are. It's a galactic embarrassment, and we may not even be able to consciously be able to to operate the things, you know, because it's not like with fingerprints or anything. You know, it's consciousness driven. So you taste that a little bit in being able to have some communications. And we have other areas of psi and phenomenology where mentally people can have macro PK, you know, they can execute macro PK events and they're not supposed to be able to do that. Our physics and science says no, you can't do that. And yet it's happening, right? So whether it's Bob Johns and Brenda Dunn's work in micro PK on subatomic particles, or macro PK with Kalignia in Russia, and with her bell jar and all that kind of thing, and she's lifting a pencil or bottle cap, you're sniffing at something that's really not on our radar as a parochial educational system in physics or anything. You're totally outside the boundary, right? And we're still dealing with fire engines, right? Okay. So it's really frustrating, and the potential might someday be there to try to back engineer more, and we've heard stories about little bitty things that maybe the Russians have back engineered, and so we're still enough of potentially the Klingons to turn things into weapons, right? So that's a big problem, is the fact that we don't have an intersection. If you have two lines, one on spirituality and technology, where's the intersection ever happening? Because we're flatlined on spiritual evolution. But our technological evolution is not only vertical, it's segmented. It's jumping. It's jumping faster. You know, and so where's that intersection of harmony supposed to be? I don't see it. I don't see it 100 years from now or 200 years from now. I don't see anything on the horizon today that ever that's saying, well, the spirituality line is going to start to really accelerate. This other one is going to start to stop. And eventually there's going to be an intersection of harmony where there's an integration of the two. I can't possibly foresee that. I don't see it at all. So it's a big worry. If you were if you were another species on another planet, a thinking species of intelligence, and we had the capabilities to get to you, you should be damn concerned about the human race.
Yeah. If I had that technology, I would not give it to us.
Yeah, okay, you just said it. That's exactly right. You just said that. That is the big enchilada right there. You just said it. That's the plate.
New York Times breaks this story out in December of 2017. It explodes. It's a tremendously important story. It changes the UFO landscape forever, but it gets some things not quite right. You've been on the sidelines watching all the reactions to this for the last 3 years. They report a program called ATIP, headed for a long time by Lou Elizondo, who got $22 million to study UFOs. And the reality is the $22 million was what went to you and AAWSAP to study much broader subjects than UFOs. And you did interact with Lou Elizondo back and forth, and the ATIP folks. But you were the big program. That was what was left over, right? Is that right?
Yeah, we were the primary program, and our program manager is of a completely different name, who ran our program. The great guy. This is the one I said earlier. I'm it's wonderful that people like him work for our government, because he's a terrific guy. And I met Lou a couple times. He didn't play a role in our program in any way in terms of who we ever reported to or whoever we discussed kind of things with, and our program manager was very fundamental and key. The contest and the entire program was created through our program manager and through Senator Reid and Inouye and Stevens to put this out for a competition, and that's all I know is. And then we won the competition, and we were deserving of that because we were so prepared to participate and do this, and we were best suited to win. We had everything in line to do that.
Since that story came out, as I said, I mean, the UFO world is turned upside down. You have a much broader audience that seems to be focused on it. These senators and congressmen who would never talk about this in a million years are now willing to come out and say this is worth studying. It is a sea change, but it's largely because of the work you guys did.
Well, one of the with the Tic Tac off the coast of San Diego, the event in 2004, we just serendipitously happened to hire on our team in 2008 one of the pilots of the group that saw the Tic Tac underwater, the churning of all the water and underwater, and then as it came out of the water, and so we got a firsthand briefing on something that we probably shouldn't have had, because it should have been totally classified, but it wasn't. It wasn't even acknowledged, you know. In fact,
it was ignored, right?
It was ignored. It was completely ignored. We had a lot of ducks in a row, and we had bought facilities, spent many millions of dollars in buying buildings, and I did have a large program to do a major construction on this property, besides what we already have here, and that was going to be really fun and cool. In fact, what I was going to use, so we would have nothing that would protrude the surface much, you know. I was going to use life support systems that you use in space, because you don't have a door you can go out of or a window you can put up, right? So you survive based on the ecosystem, the environmental control isospore systems that you create on board your stations, right? And so I was going to actually implement those into the underground facility, which was going to be substantial. And so that was a lot of fun to do that.
I know that you did knock on many doors during the AAWSAP, during the BASS program, and that doors got slammed as you're asking for sensitive stuff, or access to sensitive stuff.
Yeah.
Is the secrecy directly related to what you were just talking about, the military imperative? We're going to hold on to this stuff and figure out how to make weapons out of it, and we got to get there before the Russians and Chinese do, because they are working on it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely crashes been reported in Russia, and I've heard of them in China, South America, Brazil. They're scattered all around, almost as though they've been deliberately done. You know, let's just salt, you know, scatter the seeds around and see what happens. So, you know, you would hope that people that have custody have a sense of responsibility to and accuracy in estimating what's going to happen with something that you put in the hands of people that are not equipped. It's pretty premature for them to be able to handle something that you've just put into their hands, and they would weaponize it. So I just would hope that that doesn't happen. You know, how you know, what are the scenarios in which that could happen maybe, but you're just hoping that those scenarios never occur. Which would be, obviously, if another country develops very unique capabilities, and it appears as though those capabilities are beyond what logically could have been generated from where we are science-wise now, that might change the philosophy of people here that have access to something. And so what that might do is, instead of having just a very few scientists work on super unique kinds of things, you would have a Manhattan Project.
That's what it needs, right?
If you have a Manhattan Project in today's communication world, how do you keep the cat in the bag?
Yeah.
How do you keep control and maintain control without having all of a sudden you've generated a mad mutual assured destruction kind of philosophy, you know, which worked in the 50s and 60s and 70s for nukes, but this is something different.
Did you learn anything through BASS, through AAWSAP program, about consciousness? I mean, you cast a wide net. You were looking at big picture stuff, how different phenomena might interact. Not only just technology, but big picture, ethereal stuff. Did you learn anything about consciousness during that has affected the direction that you're about to take, the leap that you're about to take?
Yeah, there were the things that were being set up as games were thought connected. There was a spontaneity when you felt. You didn't see. Well, you didn't sense anything with the 5 normal senses. You felt something is in the room with you. So you start taking pictures. You ask, not aloud. You're thinking and asking for things to manifest on digital cameras, or you're thinking and asking for something to change the physical arrangement of objects on tables and different things. So if you if you're bringing something home with you, and an apparition is manifested, that you can start to see the quizzical look on the face of that apparition, I would say there was some kind of causal connection between the Skinwalker Ranch and something else that with whom we did not know, we did not know with whom we were communicating. And so, and it could have been ET, we don't know for sure. The bar of light, as an example, is very abnormal in the survival of consciousness demonstrations. Something like, I have not come across that in that kind of way. Not that it wouldn't fit, I just haven't come across it. I don't know anybody else that has in that kind of context. So it was a definitive bar of light. Definitive bar of light. And then it disappears. So it has the capability of appearing and disappearing, producing light, but the light doesn't, it's internal to the bar. It doesn't glow, and you've heard that many times with other kinds of objects that manifest outside, outdoors. It's a craft of some kind, it's a ball, but it doesn't project photons. It doesn't spread its light on the ground. It's a ball that has the light, but it doesn't produce any beam effect. That's aside from the ones that do.
Right.
Okay, but
you had talked about the ranch as having discarnate entities, maybe. They certainly were discarnate in many ways. Looking back at that then, is that related to what you're about to embark on? Is it the same entity? And I ask it in the context of what you touched on before. As soon as you started this planning and talking about this new venture, things started happening to your employees and people around you. Right?
And to me.
And to you.
Especially in the last month.
Strange things in your home. I mean, pretty dramatic demonstration.
Yeah, and I, and because of the way they're happening, I'd say in the passing of my wife, as you know, I lost my wife, we were married 55 years, and she passed on the 19th of February of 2020. And I thought that, and actually I was surprised that she was the roughest of the deaths compared to my father, my son, and my grandson. She was maybe the most difficult to deal with, and yet I am the most prepared to deal with it in spite of that. Because I thought, well, I knew the passing was happening. It was happening over a substantial period of time, and over months, and even years in terms of acquiring the disease and all that, so it was coming. And I thought, gee, okay, this is going to be a blow and an impact. But I am better prepared now than ever to handle it. And I was wrong. Yeah, I was surprised. So because of the events, though, that have manifested, I can associate these logically should be connected to her because of it's the only connection I can logically establish because of the circumstances surrounding around the events. And but and that's just happened basically in the last, I guess, it's been a month and a half since the first one, at least. I think a month and a half.
Things happen in your home that have a personal connection to her that you perceive as.
Yeah, and my dog. She gave me orders before she passed that if our dog predeceases me, my responsibility is to have his ashes in a container next to hers someplace. She dearly loved this pooch. And so I said, sure, of course. And so the event, there's one event that had no connection to him, but another event two other events that really did. And so I've had 3 events that were very demonstrative. And one of the events, there were 3 other people besides myself that were aware of this, and then just the pooch and me on the other 2. So, you know.
So there's some kind of a demonstration or attempt at communication, and that's intrigued you for a long time, and now you're going to do something about it. Let's talk about BICS. What is BICS?
Well, in Bigelow Institute for Consciousness Studies was formed to try to conduct research and facilitate research into the possibility of the survival of human consciousness beyond bodily death, and also to, if that is true, then to explore what is the other side all about. Because it's a big deal. If we're going to be spending a minority amount of our spiritual existence here, incarnated here, and 99.9 or what other percent of our spiritual existence isn't here. And even if you believe in reincarnations and you say, well, how many incarnations are you going to have? Still, you're spending a huge amount of your spiritual existence on the other side. To me, it's pretty damn important as to what is it? What is it all about that you should be preparing for? Does it matter as to how you conduct your life here? If it does exist, if it's real, if it's true, that your consciousness will survive, and is there a connection between what you did here with the opportunity you have to live here, to live in this side, to live in this existence? Does it matter what you did relative to the other side? What if it does matter? What if it matters a lot? And wow, then it's pretty important to know something about the other side.
The idea of consciousness, of course, it's a buzzword now. It has been for a while, but I mean, it's really a buzzword now in paranormal, UFO circles. People can't quite get their head around what it is, though. They don't know for sure where it comes from.
Yeah.
They don't know how to measure it.
Yeah.
That's a big task. You're taking a. It's a heavy lift.
Yeah, you have this dichotomy between the brain and mind, right? The brain is the physical manifestation, and the parochial thinking is that when the brain ceases to function, you don't have a mind.
That's it.
There is no consciousness.
Yeah.
And so we know by a number of different ways that the brain can cease functioning, but your mind can continue. Well, then where the hell is your mind? Hey, you've lost your mind, right? So where is it? So yeah, it seems to be a little amorphous. It's outside the physical container. So how is your consciousness being preserved and held, and by what? By how is that? So that's why everybody struggles to try to define consciousness, because we think in terms of, well, things need to be in some kind of structure, in a container or whatever, you know. The normal thinking of cosmology is that that space has a limitation of distance, and that there is such a thing as time, you know, that space began somewhere. Neither of which I believe in, by the way. I think both time and space are infinite. So I'm not a Big Bang theorist. What's the container for this mind now? Your brain's dead, but how is it that you're able to report things, and not when you're revived, if you've had a near-death experience, And you have no business, like in Leslie Kean's movie series on TV and in her book, and she has these people who tell their stories are terrific stories that you can't just explain away, and yet they should have no access whatsoever to the information that they were able they acquired.
So around the world there are pockets of interest, academic sort of interest, scientific interest in trying to measure this and try to document it. Near-death experiences, reincarnation cases, survival of consciousness, but not a lot. At least they're low-key, maybe by necessity. Maybe other parts of the world are more open to these topics. But your goal is to sort of elevate the level of discussion?
It starts with us as individuals where we have a curiosity. So my goal starts my energy begins with my own personal curiosity and the desire to make a difference. So that's then desire to make a difference now has overtaken the curiosity. So I think because I believe the other side does exist, that and there's benefits if people, because I've experienced those with people passing over, and most people of any age, have people that they lose. So if people can be helped in a grief situation, in a sorrow situation, by information, then, and the information isn't something that hurts you. It's a good gift to have that information come to you, and maybe give you a belief in something else to grab onto. That the religion wasn't enough. The parochial religion isn't enough. You're asking for more than that. You're asking for more than just what another human being has told you to think about or to believe in, to commit yourself to. And in my particular case, that's the situation, that's the case. So I think, well, maybe other people are in the same boat. And the more they can grab onto, the better off they'll feel. And especially if they get to a point to where they have enough conviction, they say, yeah, this is now what I believe is real.
So if you could make a dent in that, if you could elevate the discussion, support research that establishes beyond reasonable doubt that consciousness goes on, that we don't die, you could effectively decrease people's fear of dying. You could help people get through grief, and maybe make a difference on what they end up doing here to benefit them on the other side.
Many different kinds of connections like that. That's right. That's right. And any of those are such. It's so powerful. You could pick any one, and that's a big deal. What you as a consequence, if you believe that there's a karmic connection between both sides, then what you do matters. For better or for worse, it matters.
What evidence exists for you? What convinces you that there is another side and that it's worth pursuing in a scientific and academic sort of a...
Well, you just went through some of the list. I think you start with near-death experiences. Those are very, very profound. Not everybody has the full Monty and a full near-death experience. Some people don't have any kind of experience, and they've gone into a near-death situation, but they don't have the experience. Reincarnation, there are cases involving very young children that are, and Ian Stevenson, his book, 22 Cases Suggestive of Reincarnation, is a classic. and he had researched 2,000 cases. That 22 was just a minuscule sampling of all of his research and work. And so reincarnation circumstances really stretch the bizarre if you're trying to give conventional answers as to how people can know things they should have no business knowing. And so you're beyond the credible. If it's easier to to acknowledge something that's phenomenal here sometimes than go to extremes and trying to concoct an answer that would fit a typical scientist's method of answering something. You know, you can go to ridiculous lengths. And I think having apparitions, if you see an apparition, how do you explain that? So if you have personal experiences, if you saw something move, something levitate, poltergeist effects like very loud crashes and noises on things and nothing is out of place, and I've had that happen. I've had things so personal experiences help. Trusted members of your family telling you things that you know the family members, and they're so struck by what's happened to them, and that's impressive. How was it what were the conditions under which you were told something, and how profound something is. So I think there's all kinds of ways, you know, EVP, things that are caught on camera, so there's a lot of different ways to try to gather the information.
Both Edison and Tesla were working on something that's the equivalent of a spirit phone at the end of their lives.
Yeah, they were.
What do you think about that, and is there any similar research going on now?
Well, George Meade tried to. I think the Fletcher Foundation? I've got a block down the name. So through electronics, it has been tried many times, and up to current. There are current efforts underway to try to have some kind of a spirit connection electronically, and of course, now we haven't even mentioned the entire fields of mediums, of physical mediums that manifest physical apparitions that you could actually touch and feel.
You think that's legit? There are legit ones.
I have a totally open mind about it. I haven't personally investigated enough yet to have an absolute conviction one way or another. I would say I would not bet against it. I think there are people I know and you know that have personally touched and felt and been involved with significant controls that are huge. The controls are significant. And so I wouldn't say that right now, based on my lack of personal experience, I wouldn't say that it's impossible. I couldn't say it's 100% real, but I wouldn't bet against it.
You have been reading everything you get your hands on. You've built a good library of books that establish sort of the work that's been done before. It goes way back. I mean, some really credible people,
right,
big minds of their time, dug into this and took it seriously.
Oh, they did. It's really interesting how even, in the late 1800s or from 1850s to maybe 1930s, there was world-class scientists were involved, as opposed to today. It causes too much jeopardy to their career and their job and all of that, their reputations. So it takes gutsy people who are going to be approaching this, who are scientists, and they're going to be approaching this, and they're researchers of different ilk. And because it seems like over 100 and some years ago that it was much more legitimate ground for exploration by mainstream scientists psychiatrists, psychologists, people in the social sciences and physicists to try to understand this, because things were happening that only somebody who maybe was very fearful would not be capable of acknowledging. These events are all happening. What the hell is going on here? And am I too fearful to even have the curiosity to pursue this? I'm unwilling to even talk to these people and understand the circumstances and do it again and again and again on different kinds of cases to come to a conclusion. I don't understand that kind of thinking, that kind of self-handcuffing. I don't.
You're going to reach out to the world here in a very big way. You're going to make an announcement. I guess you could make an announcement right now about what BIX wants to do, this first big endeavor. What is it?
Well, we tried to think of ways that, what can we do as a new organization here to create some energy. And so the idea was, let's create a contest. So we have a first, second, third prize. And so we have $500,000 first prize, $300,000 second prize, and $150,000 third prize. And the contest is for essays to be produced, to choose among a variety of essays, and we hope we have more than 3 to choose from, that express in the best way the best evidence for establishing that the other side is real. It exists. The other side exists. So based on that, what is your evidence for that? And oh, by the way, you're not allowed to quote scripture, because anybody can do that, and we don't look at that as significant enough, and maybe significance not the right word, as the appropriate kind of proof that we're looking for, just quoting scripture. We're looking something more tangible, more concrete, if you will. And so what's the legal construct here? What's the basis of this so-called proof? Well, we're saying in the contest it's acceptable to use the standard that the American court system and the court system in the major Western world uses, beyond a reasonable doubt. So beyond a reasonable doubt doesn't say you have to be 100% sure that you committed this crime in order to be sentenced. But we have to be beyond a reasonable doubt that you did.
Right.
Right? And oh, by the way, witnesses matter, don't they? In the legal system.
Yeah.
They matter. And who the witnesses are matter, and how many witnesses are there matter. So we're saying, okay, that's part of the criteria here for what you're going to be trotting out in your 25,000 word or less essay, because that's the limit in 25,000 or fewer words, to prove your case. What have you done to prove your case beyond a reasonable doubt that the other side exists?
So it could be somebody who's done deep investigations into near-death experiences and document the cases, for example.
Oh yeah. It could be a priest, a reverend, a minister, a rabbi. It can be anybody who belongs to the religious community. Because they're going to say, wait a minute, now you're in our backyard, so we're going to tell you that the other side exists, and here's how we can tell you how it exists.
So let's hear it.
That it does exist.
Yeah, show it.
Right. Without quoting scripture.
Ghost hunters. Poltergeist hunters, ghost hunters, they could apply?
I think we have a series of rules and regulations, and it's going to be on our website. We're going to be opening that website up soon, and all the rules and regulations are there. The application is there that people have to fill out and so on to be a qualified candidate. And so we have opened that up to the research community that spans, it could be journalists who have spent a lot of time and effort in this field, and they really understand about it. And they, whether it's Jeffrey Mishlove, for example, or Leslie Keene, or other people, I won't go through all the names, but there are a lot of researchers who really have spent their lives, their entire lives in this work, and but we have criteria that at least says, well, you can't just transition from no involvement in this topic and decide to enter the contest and waste everybody's time in trying to go through your essay and your paper, and you have no foundation for what you're talking about. You haven't researched anything and all that, you know. So, so we are trying to make the papers as high quality as possible. And I'm hoping it's going to be tough for our judges to choose between who's first, second, and third.
So how many judges?
5. Excuse me, 5 judges.
And these are what? These are people who are knowledgeable in this field?
These are people who, in one case, is not. But she is a terrific statistician. She is a very high quality academic. She was on our NIDS Science Advisory Board, and she was there for the consciousness side of that. She was part of the group that was predisposed to that versus ET, I think, and although she stayed on afterwards, when we had to bifurcate and let go of the one side. So but we have other people. We have a person who is a physicist. And we have a person we have 2 other people who are 3 other people who are very involved in this. We have actually some of these people also are on our board of directors. So we have 3 who have been very involved many years in their lives in this work. We have another fellow who's a neurologist, and he is a medical doctor, and he has a very strong interest in this, and I can't say exactly how much researching he has done, but he privately and personally is very, very committed.
Are you releasing the names of the judges, or are you keeping that to yourself for now?
Yeah, I probably shouldn't at this. I probably shouldn't at this.
Okay,
time.
so the process is you open up the website, people can apply, fill out an application to see if they pass muster,
right?
And then they work on the paper. What's the deadline for submission of the paper?
Well, they can submit their application up until the 28th of February,
right?
And then they can go to work on their paper, and then by August the 1st, they need to submit their paper by that date, and then the judges have 3 months to digest the papers and to make collectively their decisions, and they can collaborate with each other and trying to make the decision like, you know, a Supreme Court would, not just in a vacuum, but they can talk to each other as to why this and why that, and like a jury would, you know, as to what should their decision be. And so they have 3 months to do that.
So $500,000 first prize, $300,000 second prize, right. $150,000. That kind of money should attract a lot of entrants, a lot of interest.
We hope so. You know, we're trying to do something we think is and hope is good for the whole work, for everybody's work. So many people have spent their lives in this field and haven't received much recognition. They've written books, but it's not a field that that attracts masses of people as researchers. And so we're trying to stir the pot and create some excitement. You know, it's better than lighting fireworks and sending up a bunch of balloons, you know, so we're trying to do something.
You hope that you'll get thousands of entries.
Yeah,
right?
maybe we, you know, I hate to even speculate on that, but we would like to have a good number, whether it's thousands or 100 or 200. We hope that we at least have a showing that's.
What happens to the papers that are submitted? Do you publish them? Do you post them?
We ask permission from the winners. When they or people that apply, we ask permission to put them on our website, and we also hope that the winners are going to be willing to go on programs such as your program, Coast to Coast, and be interviewed and talk about their paper and why their paper is worthy of winning, and maybe even being a runner-up. There's no monetary awards for being runner-up, but we would like to give honorable mention to papers that the judges decided weren't the 3 winners, but they might have said, gee, we wish we had 10 different categories, right, because we have these other 7 papers that are so damn good, but we were limited to 3 winners, and we had a hard time trying to choose.
Will BICS be like NIDS in that it will dive into the research itself? Or are you looking for ideas that you could pursue on your own, or is that you want to encourage the world at large to do this work?
We like to get our feet wet. We like to get our fingers into things and just see if what possibilities there might be as to what we can do to help, and so we look at BICS looks at itself as being a research organization.
Well, anything else we say about the contest or the BICS?
No, I think that's.
One last question about Bigelow Aerospace. We're in this amazing facility. You're not actively building the inflatable habitats now. Might that happen again?
We're keeping our powder dry. We're in the process of treading water. I am prepared to tread for several years if necessary.
You have some ideas in mind, though.
Yeah, we're in communication with some folks, different groups, and so the possibility is there that there could be an intersection that we find, and I would re-energize this plant.
I mean, you have a spacecraft on the ISS right now.
Yeah, we do, the beam. Yep. And we have some thoughts about that could be actually bombastic. They could really be bombastic.
Say that's a good word for it.
Yeah. Well, with expandable systems, we don't use anything that has any connotation with explosion.
Right.
We don't do that. But actually, in point of fact, the expandable systems are better able to withstand an impact than a hard metallic system is, and so we have hypervelocity impact tests that prove that ballistically.
I know. Final, I thought another one. 60 Minutes, you're on 60 Minutes. I've seen this quote 10,000 times since you delivered it. But the correspondent, Lara Logan, had asked you about, are they here? Or no, I forget what the question was, but, are you worried that people think you're crazy, and you say you're not? And then you said something more provocative, that we don't have to look too far for them.
Right.
Do we know who them is, and what did you mean by it?
Well, there's a couple of different ways to go at this. So one is from a hardware standpoint. The other one is from the presence standpoint, ET presence, and a lot of people say, well, whether they're that they can be among the population, whether they're hybrids or they're some other kind of really look alike, kind of thing. But so you can look at it different kinds of ways, and so I know of a really good, high quality researcher who has a fantastic academic credentials and background, and he would be more predisposed to the latter, saying that, yeah, they could be among us, and so but he's probably on the more extreme. He's definitely on the more extreme. Others would say, well, we're safe. in saying that there's hardware, you know. So that's among us in a hardware kind of context.
And the discarnate entities, call them spirits, whatever it was that was at the ranch, the spirits that you're going to be investigating through Bix, they could be among us too.
Well, if you follow the literature and pay attention to a lot of other kinds of sources, they absolutely are. Yeah.